Hey guys, CJ here, and welcome back to another video. Alright, we're gonna be reacting to Ranking Every DreamWorks Movie by Chase. Anyways, now I have seen a few DreamWorks movies, or a couple of them I should say, when I was like a kid. But I have seen some of the first, or I can't speak! Anyways, I'll put the original link to the original video if you guys want to go check it out for yourselves. Make sure you guys go subscribe to Chase. And without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, now before I start, this looks like a 1-hour video. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'll react to a few of the ranking of the movies that he's ranking on. Then I might have to pause it and then come back and react to it. Continue recording the reaction another time. Alright, let's get into it.
Sponsored by Surfshark VPN.
Okay, but looks like I'm gonna have to cut out his sponsored advertisement because I'm not sponsored yet.
Welp. Here we go again.
DreamWorks. Cool wipeout thing. Every DreamWorks movie, God help me.
Ants. Yes, the very first DreamWorks movie is Ants. I mean, who even remembers this movie anyway? Its entire purpose was probably just to compete with Pixar's A Bug's Life. That being said, I still think that this movie's not all that bad. Here's a quick summary. There's this ant called Z and an ant colony who's a worker ant. But Z doesn't want to be a worker ant. He wants to become like the Chad soldier ant because he wants to impress this princess girl. So then he decides to go to war, somehow survive the war, and then kidnaps the princess. Pretty bold, you might be thinking, but keep in mind this guy's a huge incel. They then find a picnic with some very not so subtle. You might be thinking, but keep in mind this guy's a huge incel.
R/slash nice guys. Yeah, what did I say?
Survive the war and then kidnaps the princess. Pretty bold, you might be thinking, but keep in mind this guy's a huge incel. They then find a picnic with some very not so subtle product placement. Fast forward to the end of the movie and they then find a picnic with some very not so subtle product placement.
What? Okay. Looks like I'm gonna have to censor the H word.
Fast forward to the end of the movie and they return back to the ant colony where everyone literally almost drowns and then Z saves them. Z ends up with the princess and the end. Honestly, for a first movie, this was kind of horrible. I mean, imagine the balls on someone to create a whole ass animation studio just to copy a movie. See it here.
Okay.
How in God's name is this a DreamWorks movie? I honestly forgot for a second while watching this that this is the same company responsible for the goddamn Boss Baby. The Prince of Egypt is undeniably one of DreamWorks' greatest movies. It follows the story of Moses from the Bible freeing the Hebrews from slavery, which indeed means that this movie is canon to the Christ cinematic universe and also the Bible. And I mean, I just love that book. I even have a signed copy. Anyway, so the movie's
He did?
and also the Bible. And I mean, I just love that book. I even have a
Darling Joseph edition?
signed copy. Anyway, so the movie starts and shows us a bunch of Hebrew slaves rushing to hide their infants as a pharaoh orders on infanticide, which is basically the killing of all infant babies so as to reduce population. Whoa.
Oh, God, no.
Oh, and I thought that Finding Nemo had a dark start, this movie takes the cake. So Moses' mother releases Moses into the river in hopes that he can return to free the Hebrews. Years later, Moses, now part of the royal family of Egypt, finds out the dark truth behind where he came from, and the fact that he was indeed adopted.
You're adopted.
He then runs away and starts a new life before being called upon by God to go free his people. He goes back to try to reason with his brother, King Ramses, but to no avail. So he instead brings 10 plagues upon Egypt and commits mass infanticide, killing Ramses' son in the process.
I've actually seen this before when I was like in sixth grade.
Moses then leads the freed slaves to the Red Sea, but then gets pursued by King Ramses and his men. But with the power of God and anime on his side, Moses splits the water in half, crosses the sea, and then closes it down to the rest of the Egyptians. The end. Although no, this movie had no right to go this hard. Everything was just perfect. The music, the animation, the story, the raw emotional damage. Literally everything is executed so well. Easy S tier.
Yep. Oh, the road to El Dorado.
Alright, this is
I've actually seen someone making a meme about that.
one of the best DreamWorks movies I've ever seen. Prior to making this video, I had never actually watched The Road to El Dorado, but my god do I not regret watching it. This movie is about these two con men, Tulio and Miguel, who receive a map to the legendary ancient city of El Dorado, which roughly translates to the City of Gold. So then Tulio and Miguel travel there and then get escorted by the town's high priest and a bunch of the locals, who for some reason think that they're gods after a volcano coincidentally erupts. So now with the whole town fooled, Tulio and Miguel live like gods before deciding to leave with all the gold. Tulio falls in love with this girl called Chell who helps them pretend to be gods. But then the town leader guy finds out the truth behind Tulio and Miguel. You know, the fact that they're literally just random people pretending to be gods. So then he tries to kill them, fails, and then tries to kill them again, and then fails again. Eventually, Tulio, Miguel, and Chell leave El Dorado and search for their next adventure. Honestly, my summary of this movie does not do it justice. This movie is absolutely hilarious, and I feel like the humor still lands today. I highly recommend this one. A tier.
Okay.
But first, sponsor time.
Okay. There's a sponsor advertisement. I'm gonna cloud his sponsor advertisement, so I'll be right back. Alright, now that we managed to skip his sponsored advertisement, let's continue. Chicken Run.
Chicken Run is a masterful movie. Somehow the stop motion in this movie has aged so well that it still holds up almost 23 years later. So Chicken Run is about a bunch of chickens trying to escape an egg farm, which, let's be honest, is basically a gulag. The main character is this chicken called Ginger, who makes all these elaborate escape plans only for them to be thwarted by the owners of the chicken farm, Mr. and Mrs. Tweedy. Until this American rooster, voiced by Mel Gibson, lands inside the gulag. Ginger is then amazed by his apparent ability to fly and asks him to teach her and the rest of the chickens how so that they could escape. Although plot twist, he lied all along and didn't actually know how to fly. The scene where she finds out the truth still kinda gives me goosebumps to this day. It was actually done so well. Anyway, so with that plan being thrown out of the window, the new plan was just to build an airplane. But then plot twist again, Mrs. Tweedy gets on the airplane and kills Ginger.
Ow.
But then another plot twist, she misses and cuts herself off and falls inside of her own factory. The chickens all escape and everyone lives happily ever after aside from Mrs. Tweedy who literally gets crushed by a door in the end. Editor's note.
Rest R.I.P.
Mrs. Tweedy actually survives, according to the new trailer, which recently dropped at the time of recording this. Overall, this movie was pretty good. My only complaint is that the story of this movie doesn't really feel all that fleshed out, and I could kinda see the twist of the rooster guy not being able to fly from a mile away. But other than that, this was a pretty fun watch. Aardman Studios is still undeniably goated. A tier. I
Rip Steve Harwell.
absolutely adore this movie. Just like an onion, it has so many wonderful layers to it. I mean, it's Shrek. This is literally an animated classic great enough to rival the greats like Pulp Fiction and Interstellar. So Shrek is about this guy called Shrek who goes on a quest to rescue a princess.
You mean Ogre?
So that he could get a swamp back from this guy who kinda looks like Markiplier. Anyways, I'm pretty sure you guys know how the rest of this movie goes. He rescues Fiona, Fiona turns out to be an ogre, Markiplier dies, and the end. If you still haven't
Fake, that's a good joke.
seen this movie, which I'm certain you probably have, you need to watch this right now. This is pretty much the equivalent of
I've actually already seen this when I was a kid.
a feature-length shitpost. I guess the only thing I didn't like about Shrek was that the pacing kinda slowed down in the second act of the movie a bit, but other than that, this movie is hilarious and absolutely unapologetic in its humor. S tier. If I'm gonna be honest, I had never heard of this movie prior to making this video.
I actually like horses. My second favorite animal because they're actually big and large like the elephants.
And judging this movie by its cover before watching it, yeah, I thought it was gonna be complete trash. But surprisingly, it's not actually that bad. This movie's about this horse called Spirit who doesn't talk but has sort of a disconnected voice for his conscience, voiced by Matt Damon. He gets captured by a bunch of Americans and pretty much decides to partake in some tomfoolery by leading an entire goddamn horse revolution and escaping, before being captured again by this Native American guy. Eventually, he gets set free, gets captured again, gets set free again, and then gets chased by the Americans, who eventually just give up after realizing that they didn't want to get beaten up by the same horse twice in a row. And so Spirit returns home, and the end. Overall, I feel like this movie was actually good. The plot was simple whilst not being too boring, and the message of this movie is about not letting anyone enslave you and fighting for freedom. I'll give it a B tier.
Okay. Sinbad. Legends of the Seven Seas. I think I remember hearing the name Sinbad before. What was it called? Oh, that name was, I heard from 50 Ways to Die in Minecraft Fairy Tale Style by Jake Guys.
Sinbad was a pretty disappointing movie for me. It's not even like this was a bad movie, it was kinda alright. I was just completely underwhelmed once the credits rolled because the ending was so anticlimactic. So Sinbad is about this pirate thief guy called Sinbad. He and his crew get framed for stealing some mystical book from a kingdom that was apparently actually stolen by the goddess of discord. But then Sinbad's friend saves him from getting executed, and if they don't get the book, he literally dies. So the goddess of discord or whatever tells Sinbad that if he answers her question truthfully, he gets the book, but if he lies, then he doesn't get the book. And the question was pretty much, if you don't get the book, would you return to the kingdom and die, or would you run away instead? Sinbad says that he would return, he gets called out for lying, and he doesn't get the book. Boo-hoo, now the movie's over, but nope. Sinbad returns to the kingdom at the last second, proving the goddess of discord wrong, and he gets the magic book in the end. Which I thought was a stupid ending! I mean, like, I saw that coming from a mile away. Whatever this man answered to the question, he would have gotten the book anyway. This question is stupid. So yeah, Sinbad is pretty Sinbad. The ending is really my only complaint with the whole movie though. It was just so anticlimactic and unsatisfying, especially with there not being really a final climax to the movie. All the problems just get solved automatically. It's like the writers just gave up halfway through. I mean, at least the animation looks decent, but other than that, this is probably a C tier movie.
Okay. Oh,
Shrek 2 is a godsend of a movie. I'm sure it's probably no surprise to you when I say that I enjoyed this movie way more than Shrek 1. This, Toy Story 2, and Madagascar 2 are pretty much perfect sequels in every way. Shrek 2 follows right after Shrek 1, with Shrek and Fiona on their honeymoon. But then they get invited by Fiona's parents to their castle. They eventually get there, but then it's revealed that this was all planned by the fairy godmother and her son, Prince Charming, to try and arrange a marriage between Charming and Fiona. The next morning, Shrek encounters Puss in Boots, who was sent there to kill him, but accidentally spills the beans that Fiona's dad Harold had sent him to kill Shrek. So then Shrek steals a happily ever after potion, which gives him the greatest glow up probably in animation history. Oh wait, so then Shrek and his noble steed head to the castle, only to find out that Prince Charming had taken Shrek's place. Fast forward a bit and Shrek gets arrested before the royal ball starts. But then he gets rescued by the gang from Shrek 1 using Pinocchio's nose.
Tell a lie! I'm wearing ladies' underwear. Are you? Embarrassing!
And this right here is when the greatest scene in DreamWorks animation history happens. That of course being the holding out for a hero scene. Take note, Illumination. This is how you use holding out for a hero. Shrek gets in the castle riding a giant gingerbread which later dies. Rest in peace, you will be remembered. Puss repays his debt, and Harold redeems himself by sacrificing himself at the last second, leading Shrek and Fiona to finally have a happily ever after. Overall, this movie is pretty much Shrek 1 but 10 times better and probably DreamWorks at its peak. The jokes all also land extremely well.
I hate Mondays.
S tier.
Yep. Garfield reference, everyone. Garfield reference.
Shark Tale is such an out-of-pocket and horrible movie, but weirdly also in a good way. This movie sort of solidified DreamWorks as a studio that made mostly post movies with a couple of good ones now and there. I mean, this whole thing is such an atrocious meme, but my god is it also the greatest DreamWorks movie at the same time. This movie is about this fish named Oscar, voiced by Will Smith of course, who owes the Italian mafia shark gang money. He eventually gets the money needed to pay them back from his friend Angie, but then decides to bet it on seahorse racing and loses it immediately. He's then ordered to get executed by a few sharks, but as it turns out one one of the sharks called Lenny was actually a vegan, so he spares Oscar, leaving his brother to try and kill him, which results in him dying, making Oscar look like he was the one who killed an entire shark. So then Oscar parades around and lives his life as the Shark Slayer, becoming rich and famous for killing a shark. Then the shark mafia go after him, he survives miraculously, and then confesses to not actually knowing how to murder sharks.
I lied. Liar!
Everyone forgives him in the end, he gets a
Liar.
girlfriend, and the whole movie wraps up conveniently like a sitcom. What a wondrous film. Honestly, for what it's worth, this movie is not very good. I mean, the animation in itself looks atrocious and honestly made me want to rip my eyes out, but I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. The jokes were funny, the plot was stupid enough to be entertaining, and the movie doesn't take itself that seriously. Even though it's not the best movie out there, it was still sort of good. And for that, C tier.
Alright.
I like to move it.
Oh, there we go.
Madagascar is a great movie and I am putting this one very high on the tier list. I do not care what anybody says. I might be...
S. What did I say?
Madagascar is a great movie and I am putting this one very high on the tier list. I do
S plus plus. S plus 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 tier?
not care what anybody says. I might be kinda biased because I love these Madagascar movies as a child, but I don't care. This may not be the greatest DreamWorks movie in terms of setting the standard higher, but I still think that it was pretty entertaining. This movie follows the animals living in the New York Zoo who decide to break out and get shipped to Madagascar. We got Alex the Lion, David Schwimmer Giraffe, Marty Zebra, and this hippo voiced by Jada Pinkett's
My wife's name out your
So anyways, the gang reach Madagascar where they get stranded and quickly learn that without food, they become wild animals to try to eat each other. They meet a bunch of lemurs and also
There's the MGM lion roar.
King Julian.
Mauricio!
And after fighting off some Fusa, they gain the trust of the lemurs and with the help of the penguins, they get back to their boat to sail to New York and live happily ever after. Except their boat had no fuel, so the sequel happened. This is honestly one of my favorite DreamWorks movies. The plot is simple, the characters were funny enough, and the overall movie was a great time for me. Sure, this movie might not have been the best in terms of animation, but man was it still enjoyable. S tier.
Oh. Wallace and Gromit and the Curse of the Were.
I'm not gonna lie, this movie is heavily underrated. Hell, Wallace and Gromit as a whole is heavily underrated. So this movie is about Wallace and Gromit trying to catch a were-rabbit, a cross between a werewolf and a rabbit, from eating all of their town's vegetables. Of course, using their little inventions and whatnot. These contraptions are always the greatest part of any Wallace and Gromit movie. We also have the bad guy, dead set on literally just using a hunting rifle to kill the were-rabbit. Anyway, so fast forward a bit and it turns out the were-rabbit was Wallace himself, which I did not see coming on my first watch at all. He basically just terrorizes the town, and Gromit tries to stop him by using an airplane and getting in a dogfight with this other dog. Wallace falls down and literally dies, but then Gromit revives him with the power of cheese.
Cheese! I'm just crackers about cheese.
What a classic movie. Once again, Aardman Studios never misses. S tier.
Yep. All over the head. I've seen this before when I was a kid.
Okay, hear me out when I say this, but Over the Hedge is probably one of the greatest animated movies, period. I don't know what it is about this movie, but it just sort of feels underappreciated in every way. This is a classic movie. I loved it as a kid, and now rewatching it, I appreciate it even more. I don't know if it's that fever dream-like feeling of nostalgia whilst watching this movie, or the animation style reminiscent of Toy Story 2, but I love it. So the movie starts and introduces us to this raccoon called RJ trying to steal food from a bear, which then goes wrong. The bear pretty much forces RJ to return all the food to him in a week. RJ then finds a suburban area with a bunch of animals. He then shows them the way of kleptomania, and we get this absolute god montage of them stealing food and also the wonders of modern consumerism. Little do the animals know that RJ was actually just using them to help him steal the food back to return to the bear. So RJ literally just gaslights all the animals into doing his work for him. But then the exterminator shows up and catches the animals after a botched heist. RJ escapes and returns the food to the bear, but then decides to change his mind and save the animals instead. And then we get this amazing fight scene with the bear, the animals, and the exterminator. In the end, this crackhead squirrel saves the day and the exterminator gets arrested. Honestly, I had way more fun in this movie than I'd like to admit. The characters are so stupid, but they honestly all make up for it with how good they tie into the story. DreamWorks, please make a sequel to this movie. S tier.
Yep.
Okay, I might be a little more biased in my opinion of this movie, just for the fact that I used to watch this movie as a kid non-stop every day. But anyways, Flushed Away is still a great movie. Aside from the human animations at the start. This movie's about this rat called Roddy, who gets flushed down a toilet by this other rat. So then he gets stranded in an underground rat city. He meets this rat girl and also gets by this other rat. So then he gets stranded in an underground rat city.
British?
He meets this rat girl and also these evil frogs trying to steal her ruby or something like that. But it turns out it's fake, as Roddy literally just breaks it to prove his point. It's also revealed that the evil frogman's plan was to flood the entirety of the rat city during the halftime of the FIFA World Cup final when all the humans use their toilets.
When everyone goes to the toilet, the whole city will be flushed away.
What's that?
All the humans use their toilets.
Is that a fish?
When everyone goes to the toilet, the whole city will be
that's a
flushed
rat.
away. He said it.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot to
Brit
mention.
then.
This movie, along with all the other Aardman movies, is very British. Like, extremely British.
Good morning, good.
So then Roddy returns and defeats the evil frogs, freezing the giant wave in the process and saving the rat city. For the most part, I thought that this was a pretty creative movie. I also sort of get how this was Aardman's attempt at trying to incorporate their stop motion films into 3D. Because without 3D, this wouldn't have been possible. But I also feel like it loses a lot of that stop motion charm. Not that the animation is bad, of course, aside from the humans, but I just prefer stop motion. Other than that, this is still a pretty enjoyable Aardman movie. A tier. Shrek the Third was sort of a letdown for me. I don't know what it is about this movie, but it just didn't hit as hard as any of the other Shrek movies. This movie follows after Shrek 2, with Shrek and Fiona being king and queen, and Shrek not wanting anything to do with it. So then Shrek, along with Donkey and Puss, set off to find the next heir, who turns out to be someone called Arthur. And despite this kid literally being destined to be the next king, it turns out he's a huge loser with no friends. Also, while this was happening, all of the fairy tale villains, including Prince Charming, decided to team up and rule over far, far away. Shrek then gets captured by the bad guys, and then Arthur gives an inspirational speech or whatever, which somehow works and saves the day. And then Shrek and Fiona have kids, and the end. Yeah, this movie was not very good. Usually every single character in these Shrek movies are pretty likable, but throughout this movie, I just sort of had a burning hatred for Arthur's character. Other than that, the story was weak, the writing didn't feel all too fleshed out, and the jokes were forgettable. B tier.
Okay. Oh, B movie. I think it's before when I was like a kid, and also saw it again in 12th grade. What was... Oh, Pig. Participation in government. That's what I was looking... That's what I was looking for and say about.
B movie is actually a good movie, and no, I am not being
Wait,
sarcastic. B movie is actually a good movie. And no, I am not being sarcastic. Even though this movie has quite the awkward premise, I found it one of the funniest DreamWorks movies ever. So on to the plot. This movie is about this bee called Barry Seinfeld, who decides to not get a job as a bee because he didn't want to work a mundane office job for the rest of his life. Instead, he then decides to go out of the hive and actually talk to humans. He somehow develops a close relationship to this girl and then proceeds to sue humans for harvesting their honey.
Did you know that you have rights?
Yes, this is not a joke, this is actually what happens in the movie. Hey, wait a sec, is that the bear from Over the Hedge? There's also the girl's boyfriend, Ken, voiced by Patrick Warburton, who inexplicably just decided
Wait.
the hedge. There's also the girl's boyfriend, Ken, voiced by Patrick Warburton, who inexplicably just decided to put so much emotion into his voice acting for no reason.
And for your information, I prefer sugar-free, artificial sweeteners made by man.
Anyway, so Barry wins the court case, the bees get left alone, and the nature just dies because without bees, there's no pollination. So then they just decide to use the remaining pollen on the flowers, which apparently save nature, and everyone lives happily ever after. All in all, the bee movie was definitely a roller coaster. All of the jokes in this movie are so surreal and actually land, which I wasn't expecting. They literally kill Winnie the Pooh in this movie. You cannot make this stuff up. The plot
Well, I believe DreamWorks sued Disney for that.
and story of this movie is so nonsensical, yet I still love it so much for some reason. I mean, at best, this was a pretty ironic movie that's still so bad it becomes enjoyable, and at worst, it's the fucking B movie. Watch it at your own risk. D tier.
Okay. Oh, Kung Fu Panda, another classic that I watched as a kid.
Kung Fu Panda is a great movie, period. The plot of this movie is so goofy, yet for some reason it works on so many different levels. So Kung Fu Panda is about this panda called Po, who accidentally gets chosen to become the legendary Dragon Warrior, who's apparently the one worthy to open the Dragon Scroll and become all-powerful. Po then gets trained by Master Shifu and eventually learns Kung Fu as well as earning the trust of the Furious Five. There's also the main villain, Tai Long, who we learn wants to take revenge on Master Shifu as he was deemed unworthy of the Dragon Scroll. Eventually, Po receives the Dragon Scroll, which, plot twist, turns out to be empty, but then Po finds out that the secret to the power the Dragon Scroll holds is actually just nothing, but instead to believe in yourself.
What you need to believe in is you.
Po then uses the wisdom to beat up Tai Long, and the end. I honestly love this movie so much. All the characters are so
Fun fact, they even made a show about this back when I was a kid as well.
simple, yet have such intriguing arcs. The story was pretty straightforward, the fight scenes were funny and well made, and I can't really think of anything I dislike about it either. S tier.
See, I've been traveling,
Here we go. Madagascar.
Like I said earlier in the video, I think that Madagascar 2 is a pretty perfect sequel to the first. Madagascar 2
Yep.
takes place right after the first one, with the gang all leaving Madagascar in a rundown airplane being shot from a slingshot. Call it glorified Angry Birds, if you will.
Yep,
The airplane then
Angry
crashes and they all get stranded in Africa. Alex then somehow finds his family and reunites with them, but then must go through a sort of passage ceremony, where he must beat a lion in a fight. However, Alex mistakes the fight for a dance fight and gets beaten up. Meanwhile, Gloria falls in love with a chunky Moto Moto. God, I really
Yep. The Moto Moto meme. That's an oldie.
just said that sentence out loud. However, their relationship doesn't really work as Gloria finds out that Moto Moto only liked her for her body. The next day, the watering hole dries up, causing a drought, to which the animals solve by reasonable means of literally sacrificing Melman the giraffe to a volcano. But then Melman gets saved by Gloria, who proclaims her love for him. The gang then escapes through a makeshift plane led by monkeys and live happily ever after in Africa. Until the penguins leave them, and so Madagascar 3 happens. Overall, I just love this movie. It was able to expand on the Madagascar universe so seamlessly and develop each character further, especially with Gloria and Melman's relationship and Alex and Marty's whole arc about friendship. Pretty good sequel. S tier.
Oh, yes. I've also seen
Monsters
this.
vs.
I've also seen this before as when I was a kid. And some clips in this, and some clips from that movie in this year.
Aliens is not a very good movie. I don't really know what this movie was trying to achieve because it wasn't very funny nor was it memorable. But hey, I mean, at least they tried. Monsters vs. Aliens is about this girl who becomes a giant because of some radiation or something like that. And then she starts working for the CIA because plot needs to happen. There's also these other monsters, including this fish guy called Missing Link voiced by Will Arnett. Hey, wait a second, isn't that the horse from Horsing Around? Anyway, so the president tries to communicate with a bunch of these aliens threatening to destroy the Earth. Isn't that the horse from Horsing Around? Anyway, so the president tries to communicate with a bunch of these aliens threatening to destroy the Earth, which end up going horribly wrong. So then the government sends out Team Monster to try and defeat the aliens, which they end up doing in an epic climax and the end. There's also this half-assed love story with the main character girl and this reporter guy that wasn't really that interesting in my opinion. I mean, to give it props, I at least like the character dynamics and interactions they had in this movie. But other than that, this was just a huge waste of time movie for me. All the action was done so poorly that I literally almost fell asleep halfway through. E tier.
Okay. I'll just stop there. I'm just gonna stop right here for now. I'll come back to this video another time. Anyways, guys, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll hopefully do a part 2 of this reaction. Because I'm not gonna waste my time watching this for I can't speak! Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.